Pay to win. A phrase that's an immediate turnoff to any Western gamer. If I asked you, is your favorite gacha game pay to win? Then it doesn't really matter which game it is because the overwhelming answer is going to be a no. Pay to win is not a label that looks good on a game's resume, and most developers and fans would go to great lengths to argue against their game being labeled as such. Gaming culture in Europe and the Americas mostly value mechanical skill over pure stat increases. While I'm sure this is mostly the case in the East, the culture there may be more accepting of practices that's considered pay to win. But what is pay to win exactly, and how does it apply to gacha games? Well, in today's highly opinionated video, I'm going to go over my definition of pay to win and why I believe that there are arguable grounds that every single gacha game, as long as it has a gacha model, can be considered pay to win. I'll start by going over the most egregious cases, then end with talking about the pay to win arguments in games that are less likely to fall under this category, but still do, in my opinion, nonetheless. Before going over my subjective definition of pay to win, what is the generally accepted definition for it? Well, in a nutshell, I believe the sentiments surrounding this stigma is that if you pay money, you can overpower another player by using the power you gain from paying, overriding any mechanical skill in the process. You paid money for an unfair advantage that you didn't have to put in the effort to work for. Of course, even if that's the case, there's a counter-argument that I think mostly originates from Eastern cultures. What if you did have to work for the power you paid for? After all, if I hustle every day in real life, work a decent job, then it's 100% at my discretion to put my hard-earned money to good use by seeing its benefits in a video game. I work hard for my money, and I'm just choosing to invest it in this avenue of my life. You may be falling behind in the game because you didn't pay. That's too bad, but that's your choice. While this definition can work in multiplayer games like MMOs and other mobile games, the difference in gacha games is that they're mostly single-player centric and may not have competitive elements like leaderboards. So how can a gacha game be pay to win? Well, the most obvious angle I can see is to design any challenging content in a way that nudges players to pay a little to solve it faster. While any gacha game is casual in nature, it's to a developer's best interest to inflate the difficulty in certain areas of the game. After all, if you can clear all content with just the starter characters, then what's even the point of the gacha? A character in the gacha can be monetized in two different ways, either aesthetically or mechanically. You either design them in a way that's emotionally appealing to the player, like if they're a popular figure in the story, or they're just incredibly attractive. Alternatively, you can make their power level gameplay-wise to be extremely overtuned. Now, let's first focus on the latter idea. This can differ game to game, but the degree of how challenging certain content are, as well as the necessity of being able to clear said content, will be different across gacha games. You may come across titles where you get a unique character skin if you place high in the rankings every season, or you just get a little bit of Gamba coins even if you fully clear it. If the rewards for clearing this content is significant, that will naturally drive up the need to max sell upgrades and pull for the meta characters. Something to keep in mind is that regardless of how a game handles its late game system, difficulty is manufactured by the developer, sometimes artificially to incentivize pulling the new shiny 5-star on rate up. You could make the argument that due to the on-banner character making the rotational challenge content easier, it is a form of pay to win. You can pay to get the character, and you'll have an easier time. There may also be dedicated modes in a gacha game where the difficulty is not tailored by the developer, but rather how competitive other players are, such as the case with PvP modes in some of them. You still have to farm up a good team in order to compete on an even playing field, but how difficult it is to win is how good the opposing team is. Generally, PvP modes are more of a side thing where you don't get much rewards, and is mostly a playground for whales. But there are PvP gacha games where the game will have to be designed in a way that still incentivizes whaling, but also keep it fair so that the low spenders and free-to-plays have a good shot at winning too. Now, the problem here is that what if you don't care about the rewards you get in the challenge content or engaging in PvP? This transitions into the central dilemma surrounding the debate of what is pay to win. What is your definition of winning? To some, just being able to clear all the significant content is enough to enjoy the game. To hell with leaderboards and fancy profile avatars. Those can be reserved for the whales, which I don't exactly care about. To some players that are hyper competitive, they do feel the need to be on the rankings list and having their username in a gold plaque. I'm not winning until I'm the very best. While it's true that most gacha games are focused on a single player experience, it doesn't stop competitive elements from being present, as the developers know very well that it does matter to some people. What's more, gacha games are live service in nature, meaning that there will be a constant need for having the newest character, and certain content within the game may tailor itself to be useless against the unit that came before it and only favoring the ones that are currently relevant right now. The term pay to win can be a slippery slope. As soon as you argue that a practice is not pay to win, then it gives developers a foot in the door to stretch that definition in a more extreme way. It's the idea that you give an inch, they take a mile. If you argue that a weapon banner in a gacha game is not pay to win because there are free alternatives, that the damage increase from pulling this equipment is not significant, and that it's possible to luck sack it, then as a developer, I now have an entry point to stretching this assumption. What if I slowly made the premium weapon have a bigger stat boosts versus if I didn't get it? What if I slowly designed the late game mode to demand the need of having that weapon? What if I slowly decrease the amount of free pulls on the weapon banner? It's a very fine line that you have to navigate, which is why that as long as there's grounds to argue that something can be paid to win, then I will argue as such. There will be certain nuances I cover later, but this is where I'm coming from. I believe the gacha aspects of the game can also obscure the pay-to-win-ness by introducing random chance. After all, you do have to admit that it's theoretically possible to luck sack every single banner and get them in single pulls. So if that were to happen, then you would be able to outmatch even the whales for absolutely no charge. Despite being extremely unlikely, you can't deny that it is possible, and could be used by a hardcore fan of the game to defend it. You can't budget random chances, and this makes for a great defensive cushion for developers to create the illusion that the game is not considered pay to win. Gameplay topics aside though, there's another side to the pay to win argument, and that's when games focus on the aesthetics aspect. Maybe you don't want to sweat for clearing the late game levels. You just want to look at the collection of characters you pulled and have that collection increase. Call me a perfectionist. I don't really care about min-maxing and having the most meta teams to tackle the challenging content. But I do want every single character to display in my in-game dorm area. I like to collect things, and isn't that kind of the whole point of a gacha game? The original premise of those gachapon toy capsule machines was to make you collect all the toys inside it, after all. Meta and maxing out upgrades is just irrelevant to me. We may play video games for different reasons, and this of course would be a valid way to play the game. It falls to the developers what exactly they want to give out for free and what they have intentionally decided to lock behind a separate paywall. This brings us to the topic of cosmetic items. I made videos talking about cosmetics in video games in the past, but what it all boils down to is what the worth of the item is to you, which can be extremely subjective. You can grumble at $60 skins and dedicated skin gachas, but something to note is that, do you really need these cosmetic items for your account? Well, considering that in today's gaming world, selling cosmetics is one of the most acceptable and uncontroversial ways to monetize the game, you bet that there will be a lot of it. Most people would not consider paying for premium cosmetics to be paid to win, but here's the thing. What if you only play for fashion? What if your win condition is to have the coolest looking skins or deck out your waifus or husbandos in swimsuits? I'm not winning unless I have the best looking cosmetics, and I can't get that unless I pay. Theoretically, if you could somehow earn everything within a gacha game for free, then I would admit there's no grounds to argue that it's paid to win. But let's face reality. No matter which way you spin it, gacha games are a business, and they can choose to make money in a multitude of ways. Some of these methods are more culturally acceptable, and some less so. Everyone may play a game for reasons of their own, and as long as I can find an avenue in which your progress may be blocked by a paywall, I can make the argument that it's pay to win. If you go into the dispense pool in Limbus Company, there is an item that you can only buy with paid currency: the announcers. If you're a perfectionist and want everything in the game, well, I guess that's one purchase you will have to make to get there. If that's how you want to play, then this game is pay to win, for you specifically. The term pay to win is subjective. To some, a skin in a video game may just seem like vanity and completely skippable. For others, it's a must-have item for their favorite character. To some, being at the pinnacle of power and dominating the player leaderboards is why they play, and others, it just seems kinda pointless. You can make the pay-to-win argument more strongly in some games versus others, but I think no matter what the nature of the game is, as well as how the developers choose to monetize, there can be an argument to be made. The idea I want to end off is, if people out there do label your favorite game as pay to win, so what? I mean, does that affect your enjoyment of the game? I mean, sure, some egregious cases like Raid Shadow Legends exist, but it's still a free game, as if you somehow found it enjoyable without spending a dime, then you would have still played a decent game according to your standards. If the whole point of video games is to have fun, then does it even matter that much if people around you are saying it's pay to win? I played some gachas over the years that I thought had some strong points to it, but was marred by pay to win mechanics, such as AFK Journey. Except, even without spending anything, I still got to enjoy a fairly decently presented storyline. I auto-battled my way through some content and got to experience the detailed open-world exploration. Sure, there were flash sales constantly thrown at my face, and the cash up is incredibly egregious with how it's marketed. I still got some amusement out of it with my time. You can say that I won my enjoyment of the game. This comes from the idea that when you become very enfranchised to something, you want to shield it from all outside harm, like people critiquing it, as if it's your own child. Even when certain criticism can come off as neutral or not even that negative, people tend to attribute opinions of something to the extreme ends of good or bad these days. So terms like mid, bland, mediocre are typically associated with sentiments that the game is dog shit. If I said, this game feels soulless, what does that even mean? How can a video game have a soul? Even though the statement can be a bit ambiguous, you just know that it's a criticism of the game, and you most likely wouldn't like that when it's directed at something you enjoy. The main point I want to get across is that the term pay to win can be a lot more subjective than you think. It's valid to play a game however you like, and in the case that the developers consciously place in a barrier that prevents you from getting to your win state, then you're still gonna have to shell out your wallet to get past it. While there are more conventional definitions of pay to win, the thing is that even if a game isn't pay to win for you, it probably is to someone out there.